What's up, y'all? It's me, it's your boy Asmongold, and today I'm going to talk to you guys about pretty much what I think is wrong with Warlords of Draenor, and then after that, we'll talk about what I think can be done to fix it. Now, I want to preface a lot of this by saying that some of these things are not really concerns of mine, but there have been concerns that I've been reading on a lot of the different fan sites and stuff like that. Also, as a general rule, I really like the expansion. I think it's great. Okay, but it doesn't mean that there aren't things that can be improved on, and that the people who have concerns, I think that they're legitimate concerns. And so we're going to kind of go through a lot of those, and then I'm going to tell you guys, as I said before, what I think that we can do to fix that. Now, the first one is obviously the the problems at the beginning of the expansion. If you guys don't remember, the servers were down, and then they were up, and they were down, and then there was DDoS attacks, and what it really came down to, oh, then there were the queues. I forgot all about that. That's like some PTSD shit there, but I forgot all about the queues. Oh my god, that was the worst. And so you couldn't play for like 8 hours. It was just horrible. And so anyway, that happened for about the first week of the expansion, or at least like the first 5 days. They fixed it. They gave everybody free game time. That's great. It was really frustrating, but now it's done. And so another thing that I want to talk about is the PvP balance. I really do like to do PvP. I enjoy PvP a lot, in Cataclysm especially, and a little bit in Wrath of the Lich King. In Burning Crusade and in Vanilla, I pretty much exclusively PvP'd because I was a kid then. I wasn't really able to commit to a raiding schedule in the same way that I was able to whenever I got older. And so for me, to see like my arms warrior to really have like three different buttons and to just have absolutely no way of countering certain classes, and then I play other classes and it seems like they have all these advantages that I don't have. It seems like PvP is very imbalanced, and it kind of got a cursory glance whenever I guess like the beta happened. I think that there are a lot of issues in the WoD beta that never really got addressed, and I think that that's a huge problem. I know a lot of people were in the beta, but I've made some videos about problems that I could see in the beta, but I don't really think a lot of people did that kind of stuff. And because it was obviously limited content, people didn't really understand the scope of what to expect. And so I can understand why that happened, but I do think that a lack of beta feedback was part of the reason why we don't really have as much content. Now, that's like a general concern that people have, is that they say that I guess people don't really, that they don't feel like that the expansion is like half finished, that they're waiting for something, and they don't even really know what it is, but they're just waiting for something to happen. And honestly, guys, I'm going to say that Blackrock Foundry isn't even out yet. Obviously, that's going to add in a lot more content. And people are also comparing Warlords of Draenor right now to Mists of Pandaria in 5.4 and or 5.4.8. And so, like at the end of the expansion, and everything's pretty much all said and done. And so at that point, Blizzard had about 2 years of content that they had built up. They had the Isle of Thunder dailies. They had the Warlock Green Fire quest. They had all of the dailies that it was released with all the different reputations, the Cloud Serpents. They had tons of stuff by the time they had 5.4 come out. And honestly, there was a lot of stuff to do at the end of Mists of Pandaria if you would just come into it and you were looking to do all of the things. Like pet battles were implemented. There's a tons of things that were implemented in Mists of Pandaria that were actually really good. A lot of people like to look at everything through rose-tinted goggles, and to be honest, like I think the sub numbers can pretty much reflect this. Is that Mists of Pandaria was all in all, it was a very good support expansion. Like it supported a lot of really great things. It added in, I thought, the item upgrades, but they got rid of that now, and I'm going to talk about that later. It added in pet battles and just tons of other like new features. And so I think that Mists of Pandaria added in a lot of things that were great, but it just kind of fell flat in terms of, I guess, like satisfying the older long-term players. And so anyway, the next thing that we're really, well, actually, I do want to talk a little bit more about PvP. And another thing is like an example of this is like Aviana's Feather. If you guys don't know what that is, it's a reward from the inn. And so if you use Aviana's Feather in a battleground, it used to be able to fly you from one end of the map to another. And so you could basically exploit in the game, and this wasn't even considered. Like, this is like, I mean, come the fuck on. Don't you think that people would have tried this? And this is low-hanging fruit in terms of beta testing, okay? And it was never even looked at. Another thing is that an exploit that I took advantage of whenever I was leveling, and I actually pointed this out in Wars of Draenor, like the first, I don't even know, like the first week of beta, the first week or maybe even in alpha, I pointed this out, is that you could repeat farm the mobs in the Fate of Kerebor scenario, and you could level all the way up to like 95 in just a few hours just by AFKing or if you're botting or something like that. And there's no way because the people can even find you because it's an instant zone. And so that is still not even fixed. That's not even fixed now. And so that's kind of surprising to me, honestly. And there have been a lot of things that does seem like the expansion was rushed. And I would rather have had a rushed expansion than get a complete expansion later on because they're still working on the stuff. It's not like they put out the expansion and like, oh, now we're not going to do anything. And so I'm glad that it was released early, but at the same time, it is kind of disappointing to me personally that there's not as much level 100 content as I would like there to be. And also another thing that I'm going to talk about is Ashran. Now Ashran, I haven't really spent a whole lot of time in Ashran. A lot of people don't like it. I personally think Ashran is great, but because there's no real, it's like in Wintergrasp, it was a battle every 2 hours, and like fucking everybody from the server was in there, and you know, like people were yelling, and just like you had, it's like on Kel'Thuzad, you had the horde down into their little graveyard, and you had like the demolishers like shooting, I don't know, like explosions or explosive bombs on top of their graveyard, just waiting for them to respawn, and it was like pretty fun to do, especially you know, assaulting it. And I really wish that they would add something like that in, but I don't really know if they will, and I understand why they didn't. Now, I think that one thing that that Blizzard could do is they could add some sort of siege function to Ashran, and to where every, like, let's just with everything else, same with Tolbarad, every 2 hours you're able to get vehicles and actually lay siege to the other factions, like I guess like town, city, rather than it just being all the time. I think that that would kind of add in a lot more stuff, and also it just like increase like the hype for it, I guess. But either way, I do think that that would Ashran has a lot of potential, but I don't think that that it's fully living up to what it really can be, because I really like Ashran. I thought it was probably one of the best things that Blizzard's done in Warlords of Draenor, and it seems like it's just going to be kind of boring because there's not really a whole lot of stuff going on. It's just like a bloodbath. Anyway, this is going to be a long video, by the way, because I have a lot of bullet points here, and I've only done 2 of them. Okay, so fucking strap in or just take a break, because this is going to be, it's going to be a real long video because I've got a lot to say. As I said before, I've read all of the different things that people have said on the different forums, and there's a lot to talk about. So another thing is there's basically no daily quests in Warlords of Draenor. There is your Apexus crystal daily, and I think that that's great. I think it's fun. It's kind of grindy, and I don't really mind that too much because I like grinds. You know, I have fun doing them. But after a while, having to do it every day or whatever is kind of boring. And also another thing about the Apexus crystal daily is that Apexus crystals don't fucking matter. Like, what are you going to do? You're going to save up for 4 weeks, a month to get a 655 piece whenever you can literally go into normal high mall, which is so fucking easy, it's embarrassing, and you can get the same item the same item multiple times in 1 week, basically. There's not even a question. So the Apexus crystals, and yeah, you can buy the mounts with them, and that's great, but the fact that there's a gear progression, the gear's just too expensive, and I think that that's kind of stupid. I think that dailies should be added back in, and I know that a lot of people hate, they're like, you know, they fucking hate dailies, and they're glad that they're gone. I didn't really mind dailies too much. In what do you call it? In Mists of Pandaria, I thought that dailies were just way too overhyped. I mean, there's just too many of them. I think almost everybody can agree with me there. I didn't even finish all of them, and I actually didn't even finish all my rep grinding stuff to do in Cataclysm either, whenever the expansion was released. But for me personally, I think that the best daily hub, the best daily area in the entire game that's ever been created, and probably one of the best content, like solo player content patches that's ever been added, was the Firelands dailies. They were absolutely amazing. It created an entire new world. You had like your own personal progression. There were different progression paths that you could take, but one didn't lock you out of the other one. It kind of like instanced out and revamped all of Hydra. Like, honestly, guys, I'm feeling good even talking about the Firelands dailies. Like, they were really, really great. I love them. The only problem that I would see with the Firelands dailies is they didn't add enough gear that you were able to accumulate, and so that's another problem with the Warlords of Draenor. What do you call it? Factions or reputations, is that you don't really get rewards from your, I guess, like from getting exalted. You get a mount, and the problem with that is that there are so many mounts in the game. It's not like these mounts are rare or they're new or they're cool. They're basically just reskins of the other mounts that you can get through easier means. And so, okay, now I have the black boar, but I already have the blue boar. Why do I want the black boar if I already have the blue boar, right? And so there's not really a whole lot of stuff going on. Obviously, you can get a tabard. So that's pretty much how I feel about that. And also, sometimes you get a follower, but that's from Revered. And so anyway, I think daily quests should be re-added back into the game. Now, I remember back whenever I played Alpha of Warlords of Draenor, that the map was still added. There was still a Netherstorm area in the map. And so I think that there will be like an area, well, it's not a Netherstorm area, but an area where Netherstorm is in Outlands now. And that was actually added into the Warlords of Draenor map. And I can pretty well assume that that's going to be added in maybe in 6.1, maybe in 6.2. We're not really sure. Nobody really knows except for people who work at Blizzard. And so hopefully they add in a large daily quest hub and things that allow players to kind of, another thing that's an issue, I'm going to just kind of get right into this also, is that players feel really isolated in their garrisons, and I think that that's a huge issue because one of the things is that I knew this would happen, and I remember whenever they added trade chat into garrisons, I was one of the only people who came out and said, you know, this is not going to be good for the community. No, everybody's just going to sit in their fucking garrison all day. They're going to have no reason to come to Stormshield or to Stormwind or anything, Orgrimmar, whatever. There's going to be no reason to go there because you can just sit in your garrison. And what that really does is it isolates players, and a lot of players, people play MMOs because it gives them a sense of community. It allows them to interact with other people that they don't really have the option to or the ability to in real life. And so whenever you take away that, you know, because like it's like you sit in your garrison and there's like your guys walking around. They don't give a fuck about you. They're just NPCs, and they just walk. They walk right through you. They don't even know. Oh, sometimes they say hello, commander. Not a big deal. But you go over to Stormshield and you see other people. And like right now in Stormshield, there are thousands, not thousands, but there are hundreds of people in Stormshield on Kel'Thuzad. Like, there's just tons of people everywhere. Like you probably can't even walk somewhere, especially near the Ashran queue, walk somewhere without being standing on top of somebody else. And so there's a lot of people there, but I think there would be probably twice as many people there if they had the if they didn't have trade chat and garrisons. And so garrisons have worked really well as I guess like a meta in game for I guess casual players. And the reason I'm saying this is that my mom plays the game and that her garrison's it's better than mine. And so she spends a lot of time in there. She always does her missions and she really enjoys it. She collects all the ore. She's leveling the other character to have the other garrison buildings. And so she's having a lot of fun with this, and it's a good thing for her. And I think that a lot of other casual players feel the same way. But the problem is that it's just very isolating, and I wish that it wasn't. I think that they shouldn't have trade chat in garrisons, and garrisons should have a lot more limited, I guess, like usability. Also, I think that garrisons should be added as an account level thing, not a player level thing. So you can have your garrison, and all of your players share the same garrison. And I think what that would do is it would kind of make people feel like they're less obligated to create alts, and also it would allow people to kind of have their different characters also all on the same level, so they don't feel like, okay, I have to make this new character, then I have to deal with all these new followers, and it's just like, it's a bunch of extra stuff. Now, while some people like that, I do think that it would be better. I do really think it would be better if garrisons were account bound, but we'll talk about that a little bit more, maybe, I don't really know. Another thing is that, as I said before, the Apexus crystals are really not rewarding, and there's not a lot that you can do with them. Now, if you were to use Apexus crystals to upgrade your gear or to buy certain, like if you were able to buy augment runes with Apexus crystals, like that would be amazing, and people would farm them at least a little bit more than they do now. But right now, the rewards for getting Apexus crystals are very minimal, and the time that it takes is very high. And like another thing is that Warlords of Draenor had a lot of things that had a very high potential. An example of this is, if you guys don't know, I think that there are 3 different, no, there's 4, but only 3 of them are available right now, I believe. There are 4 5-man world boss hydras that are around in the world. There's Echidnia, who I don't know if I'm pronouncing any. I don't know if I'm going to pronounce any of these right, by the way. Echidnia, who's like the inspires Verak. Lemurian, I think it's his name, who's in like the water off randomly in Nagrand. Why the fuck is he over there? He should be. It makes no sense. But there's this guy randomly in the middle of the ocean. It's level 100, 5-man world boss Hydra. Okay. Also, there's Typhon, who's like behind the Evergreen Wilds and Gorgrond. And there's another one who's actually not supposed to be in the game right now, but he's in the Tannin jungle, and people were able to fight him if you were to able to like wall jump up there. But either way, so all of these Hydras, like whenever I first saw Typhon, I have a video to that, and honestly, I was so excited. Like I thought that I had just like seen like a unicorn in real life or something like that, because honestly, I live for the adventure stuff. You know, like you're just going around and you're exploring this new world, and you see like this giant, you know, level 100 elite world boss. Like this is incredible, and so I got a group together, and you know, like I was really excited, and we killed him, and I was just fucking pumped, and I got like 17 Apexus crystals. The reward for that is just, what's the point? Like, you have this amazing thing and it's like so fun, and then you get really no reward for it. It's kind of shitty, and I think that was a huge problem. You don't even get a lot of gold for it. There's nothing, and so there's no real reason to kill these things at all, honestly, unless you want just a few Apexus crystals. And so that's a very unrewarding problem, and as I said before, Apexus crystals in general are very unrewarding. Another thing that I really don't like that they did with Warlords of Draenor is they removed a lot of the investment that you had to put into your gear. And what I mean by that is that you no longer have to do item upgrades. Hopefully they'll bring them back, but we'll see. Like how you had to spend like Valor points or Pandaren charms at the end of it in order to upgrade all your gear. And so whenever you upgrade your gear, then you had to buy an enchant, and then you also had to buy gems. And if it was Throne of Thunder, you had to buy the eye to put in the gems, and then you had to buy the meta gem. Sorry, with the other gems from Wrathion. And so by the time that you actually had a weapon that was where it was supposed to be for, I guess, like your raid, you'd probably drop like maybe close to 15, 20,000 gold just in getting this one item. And I thought that was really cool, because it made me feel like, I guess, like I had invested a lot in this item, and I had put a lot of work into this, and I'm finally, you know, being able to use it, and I felt more invested in my character in general. If you guys don't really know, they pretty much took away enchants from everything aside from rings, necks, weapons, and I think something else, cloaks. And other than that, there are no chest enchants, there are no helmet enchants, there are no meta gems. And they could add in a lot of new meta gems that would add in like kind of cool little procs, you know, the procs for like bleed damage or something like that, procs for, you know, like some sort of version of the, what do you call it, the Pandaria legendary meta cloak or legendary cloak, or like even the meta gem. And so there are a lot of things that they could add in for meta gems, and they didn't really do that. And I don't really like that at all. And I think that it kind of, I guess it makes me feel not as invested in my gear and in the game in general and in my character. And so, like, whenever I get a piece of gear now, it's like, okay, great, you know, I just put this on and it's fine. But I still can't help but feeling, you know, it's like, all right, well, I want to enchant this, you know, I want to take care of this little piece of gear because I spent so much time and effort and work on it. You know, like my what do you call it? What is it? My axe from Siege of Orgrimmar, you know, I had put, you know, the best enchants on it. I had upgraded it 4 times. You know, I spent like an entire week, you know, buying the stuff to upgrade it. And then on top of that, after I've done all of that other stuff, I buy gems for it, and then I reforge it. And so, like, I've got this absolutely, you know, customized that I've worked so hard on to get this one item. And now that's all gone. I don't really have any control over what I get, over really any of that. I just get what I get, and that's it. And so it's kind of it's very shallow. And that's also another thing, is there's, in general, minimized complexity. There's not, the talents are, I don't really give a shit about the talent trees. I don't really think that they matter. I think that they should add back in like a 60-point talent tree or like a 100-point talent tree or something like that, just to allow people to customize their character more. And I think that one of the reasons why they removed a lot of customization is because it's easier to balance that way, because people aren't really able to stack mastery, because like if you're a PvPer, you can either get the haste mastery belt, or you can get the crit mastery belt, or the crit multi-strike belt. It's more or less the same thing, and so you're not really able to, I guess like customize how you want to play your character as much. And I think that that's kind of shitty. And in general, I like character customization as much as possible, just because it allows you to do things that maybe they might not really have expected you to do. And I think that's part of the fun of it, is to kind of figure out these new cool ways to do things. Like I remember I used to have in Wrath of the Lich King, I had this like different set to where I was able to use Bloodthirst, but I was actually tanking at the same time, so I could heal myself and tank, and so it allowed me to solo a lot of different content. Like Onyxia, I still have it on like my old channel and stuff like that. And so that was a really enjoyable thing that I was able to do. And whenever now they forced you into picking, they forced you into picking your bottom tier talent, and now they just pretty much give you a bunch of different talents already. It's again very shallow, and I think that they need to add a lot more customization just back into the game. Like just do the same thing. I don't think that they should bring back reforging. I just don't think they should bring back reforging. Another thing is professions. I think that professions is one of the least argued things about Warlords of Draenor that's kind of a lackluster thing, is people don't really like professions and kind of how they turned out. And I think that one of the big reasons for that is that the professions are they're gated, obviously, because you can only make so many true steel bars a day, and so you have to wait 7 days or 15 days in order to make enough true steel bars to buy, or to make this one item. And it's kind of ridiculous. And yes, I know you can buy them with spirits or primal spirits, but to be honest, that's really not as realistic as you might think it is. And so in all, what it really comes down to is that, like, I was looking, like, people compare like the gnomish goggles that you had to create in Sunwell to the goggles that you have to create now. Now, if I remember correctly, the gnomish goggles that you had to create in Sunwell had about 8 different materials that you had to all put together from different places in the world. And this was really common, especially in vanilla, where you'd have to get maybe 6 different items that were just like kind of random, and you had to put them together to make like this ice sword. And so you had to get like these ice things from like the ice yetis in Winter Spring. And so it really felt like an actual, like you're creating an ice sword. Whereas now, if you want to make the helmet, you just need 100 of these little parts that you can only make 3 of or something like that a day. And so it's just basically a waiting game. And that's what I don't really like about it. People say that garrisons are a lot like a Facebook game, and I do agree with that in a way, but I don't really think that that's a bad thing. The part of it where it's bad is that people feel like they're compelled to do them. And if you're a raider, you kind of have to. You don't really have to, but in order to, I guess, like, play at your full potential, you'd want to be able to at least do your high mall box daily, or your, but your bi-weekly follower quest. And so you have to really put in a lot of work to do that. And there's a lot of legwork in between, being able to complete that and starting out. And so you have to do all that stuff. And so garrisons in a lot of ways are required, and especially because of how lucrative they are. And so because of that, people feel like they have to be in there, and people who are bored of the game, instead of just logging off, they log in and they do their garrison quests and they log out. And so they feel like they're kind of compelled to do this. And so I don't really think that that's a very good thing at all. Another thing is there's like 4 or 5 reputations. I don't even think there's 5. There's like the Erica Outcasts, Council of Exarchs, Shatari Skyguard, if you have a trading post, Steamwell Preservation Society, and the Rin's Vanguard, if you do PvP, and the things like Vol'jin something, if you're Horde also. And so you really only have 5 reputations, and one of them is locked to, what we call it, to a special garrison building, and the other one's locked to PvP. And so for an average player that doesn't have the garrison building, or just does like raiding and they just don't have that one garrison building, there are only 3 reputations that you can farm. And I think that kind of sucks too, because they're in Mists of Pandaria, there were a ton of different reputations that you could farm and you could do stuff for. And then, like, whenever they added the Warbringers, you were able to farm Warbringers to get reputation items. And so there was all this stuff around it. And also, the reputations, in order to get from Revered to Exalted in the Erica Outcasts and the Council of Exarchs, the Council of Exarchs has some quests. The Erica Outcasts, after you finish all the quests, you're going to be maybe tops 5,000 of 21,000 Revered. And so you've got to farm out, 16,000 reputation. And you know how you do that? 5 at a fucking time. And the best way to do it is, I mean, I showed a video on how to do it, and you can get like 10 reputation 1,000 reputation every 10 minutes if you're doing really well, and maybe a little bit more than that if you have people helping you. But the point is it's just a grind fest, and whenever you get exalted, you don't really get anything out of it. There's a follower that you get, and no, not a follower. Yeah, you do get a follower for Eric Outcast. You get a tabard, and you don't really get any gear, and you don't really get anything else, period. And so the real rewards for getting exalted with this faction are minimal. There's not even any 640 gear, and getting exalted to begin with is just really frustrating. And so it's, again, like, it's not really very rewarding to farm out just mob after mob after mob for hours after hours after hours, because that's still like 16 10-minute sections, so that's 160 minutes. So that's 2 hours and 40 minutes. That's like, I mean, you could watch War of the Rings and farm that out, and so it's not really too bad. But sitting there and killing those mobs is pretty fucking boring. And if there's not even an option to do it another way, there's not like a heroic dungeon, I don't really know what to say. I think it's kind of shitty. So I think that, I mean, basically, there should be a lot more reputations added in, and it's like the reputations now are like the Emperor rep was in 5.4 with the Timeless Isle. But the Emperor rep, if you got exalted with the Emperor, you were able to get this mount, and the mount was awesome. Like, the mount was fucking amazing. And the reason for that, obviously, is because there are no other real mounts that looked like it. I mean, I know that there was another Gold Serpent, but this one looked significantly different, and it was really cool. So, like, you could obviously see, like, there was a very visible reward that you could see. Whereas the mounts that you can get from these reputations are just pretty much just like all the other ones. And so there's not really a whole lot of reason to buy them. It's like if you were only able to get one River Beast in the entire game, or one Cleftif in the entire game, and it was from like one of these reputations, people would have a lot more incentive to go and farm them. But since there's just 1,000 other Alex and whatever else, what the fuck is the point? Another thing is that pet battles don't really have a lot to them. I know I think the menagerie is great, and I think that's a really good start, but because there haven't really been anything else that's added into pet battles, you can't really do much with them. There was like 7 or 8 trainers that were added in, and then there's the menagerie, but other than that, pet battles haven't really gained any depth. There hasn't been any level increase. It's just basically you collect more pets so you can do the same thing over again. And so pet battles hasn't really gotten a lot of gotten a lot of love from Blizzard and Warlords of Draenor, and I know a lot of people don't really give a shit about pet battles, but it is a part of the game, and a lot of people enjoy it. Like, I like to do pet battles sometimes. Okay. Another thing is that the rares that you kill in Warlords of Draenor, I always thought this was shitty. You're only able to kill them once, and so after you kill one of the rares, or at least most of the rares that aren't elite boss rares, or like actual elite rares that are in like different questing zones, after you kill them once, you don't really ever get to kill them again, and you don't really get rewards from them. And in my opinion, I think that what they should do is they should make them once a week, maybe even once a month. And so whenever you can go around, there's a reason for you to go out in the world after you've already explored everything just once. And so, again, it's an MMO, and so they have to really kind of focus on the replay value, and just being able to do things once isn't very replayable. And as I said before, like, the garrisons I think the garrisons have done really, really great things, and they've done some really, really bad things in terms of isolating players. I think that if garrisons didn't play as big of a part, people would feel like they're inside of a community, because a lot of people have said that they've lost their sense of community in the game, and I don't think being able to do everything and function and do everything through the garrison really does a lot to help the community. And most people play the game to play with their friends. Whenever I ever have seen a lot of my friends who came back at the end of Burning Crusade to play in Wrath of the Lich King, and the end of Wrath of the Lich King to play in Cataclysm, the main draw, whenever we first got him in Bent, we're like, yo, we're here, it's me and all my other buddies, and that was the main sell. It's all of their old friends, all of their friends who are coming together to play the game. It's not about, Deathwing is coming, we've got to kill Deathwing. Nobody gives a fuck about that. I mean, Deathwing could be a purple box. But, I mean, obviously lore is important, but for people to come back and actually play the game, most people don't really come back, I don't think, to kill a certain boss. They come back because certain other people are playing that they care about. And so, when you don't have anybody else, for me, I have a lot of different friends in the game. I've always made friends in the game, but now you actually have to work to kind of to socialize. You know, you're not automatically put in social positions in the same way that you were able to be put in those same positions back in Burning Crusade or even Wrath of the Lich King. And so that's one of the big draws, or draws away from the community, is that obviously in garrisons you just sit there by yourself and you just do your little follower missions, click your work orders, and that's pretty much it. And so you're very isolated out in your garrison, and that's obviously kind of like, I guess, like something you would expect from your garrison. It's just yours. And so I wish that wasn't how it was, but it is, and hopefully they'll change that. Maybe they might remove trade chat or something like that, or just honestly, I think one of the big, well, we'll talk about the solutions later on. Another thing is that people have been really pissed off about no flying, and I made a video about this that I thought was great that there was no flying, and I'm still sticking to that. I think it's great that there's no flying, but at a certain point it does get a little boring, and I do think that if you were able to complete all of the missions, all of the quests, all of the little treasure items, and just like kill all the rares, if you completed all of those, I think you should be able to fly in Warlords of Draenor, and so that would at least add some sort of prestige to being able to fly. And it would also kind of pacify a lot of people who are not really able to fly, because they can actually go through all the content. Because after you've immersed yourself that much, I think that you can fucking deserve it by that point. But either way, I do hope flying comes back, maybe in 6.2, afterwards. And so then we can actually be able to fly around and I guess get around easier. I'm not even going to do archaeology until they have flying. Like, that's all there is to it. I'm just not even going to do it. Waste of time. So either way, also, I think that this is like more of a general thing, and I think that the game has become a little bit too casual for its own good, because, as I said, the community is one thing that's always driven the game, and because you don't really have that same community now, just there's so many queues, like you queue up for this, queue up for that. You never really have to know people. You never really have to make friends. In the PvP community and the RPG community, you have to know people in order to get somewhere. And while that has its advantages and disadvantages, it keeps people playing, and I don't really see, the same amount of turnover in the RPG community whenever I used to do a lot of RPGs, as I do see in the in the PvE community, and just like raiding in general, and also just pure casuals, just because there's not really that same community. You don't really have your friends playing and all that other stuff. It's just basically you, and that's all there is to it. Another thing is the heroics. The heroics are very unrewarding right now, because you run the heroic and it's just a glorified slot machine. You can maybe get the item that you want, and it can maybe have the stats that you want, and it can maybe be warforged or not. It can maybe have a tertiary or not, and it can maybe have a socket. And so there's a lot of maybes there. And when there are that many maybes, and you have to take a 30-minute to an hour investment of time for that many maybes, not a fucking chance. Nobody's going to be doing that. And it's one of the big problems that people have with Diablo, is that, like, how long is it going to take to get an item that has 100% critical strike chance and 10% critical strike 100% critical strike damage, 10% crit chance, and like 9% attack power with your main stat on it? It's probably never going to happen. And so whenever you get kind of close to that, you basically beat the game, because there's no real way for you to effectively farm out and have a visual, path to your next upgrade. You're basically stuck there, and you're just controlled by luck. In Diablo, like the third day, one of my buddies, Zach, he got an item, and it had almost perfect stats on it, and he never replaced that item, like, period. He never replaced that item until they added new gear. And so I think that that's really kind of shitty. I think that WoW has borrowed a lot of things from Diablo, and in some ways it's made it better, and in some ways it's made it worse. And I think the RNG in the game would be a lot better if you were able to control it. And so an example of this would be if you were able to, like, let's say, kill a mythic boss, and you were able to loot different items, the same as you were able to loot Spirits of War in Siege of Orgrimmar, and you were able to use, like, let's say, the Spirit of War to warforge your gear, and so you could apply it to your gear, and let's say it drops 5 Spirits of War, or maybe 3, or something like that. As those Spirits of War would allow you to kind of force your progression and take some of the RNG out of the game. I don't really like it, the fact that whenever I get an item and it's not warforged with a socket, I feel like this is just a filler item until I get what I really want. And so you're just always stuck being almost there, and I don't really like that. And to me, it's not keeping me on the hamster wheel. It's just demotivating me, because what are the probabilities of me actually getting off that hamster wheel? Because if you can't ever see an end in sight, what the fuck is the point of even trying? And so for me, I like to have all the best gear, like just absolutely best in slot gear, same as I had in Siege of Orgrimmar and Dragon Soul. Like, it was great, like I could just, I have the best gear, that's it, it's awesome, okay? And I still kept playing, and the people who actually do get the best gear, you can pretty much guarantee that they're not just going to quit afterwards, because they've spent a whole lot of time in the game. So I do think that's really, really big problem, because honestly, it's just really unrewarding to get the item, and it's like, oh, this isn't Warforged, this is just a base item, and so great, I have this item, but I can never perform as highly as somebody else who just gets lucky. That sucks. It's shitty, and they need to have some sort of way to where jewel crafters can maybe put sockets on the gear, or they can get an item that allows them to put a socket onto a gear. Like, there are so many different options to allow this, and that would actually increase them and better professions too. And they're not even being addressed, and I don't really like that at all. It's just gear is way too random, especially on heroics. And heroics, like, as soon as I was good enough to do challenge modes, sorry, I never did heroics again, because it was a waste of time. I could run 5 different heroics, 10 heroics, get nothing. I just get nothing. And then one time, I remember I ran Shadowmoon Burial Grounds. I got the 2 items that I needed, and that was it. There's no rhyme or reason to it. It just happened. And so, just the fact that I have no control over what I'm getting is really demoralizing. And it's not just demoralizing. It's just plain out fucking demotivating. Okay. Another thing, like, let me see. Oh, this is a thing that is just fucking ridiculous. Is it you kill the same boss? So if you go to Raid Finder, you get killed the same boss 4 times. So you kill Imperator on Raid Finder, then you kill him on normal mode, then you kill him on heroic mode, and then you finally kill him on Mythic. And on Mythic, okay, there's an extra phase, it's a little bit different. Okay, that's cool. But for a fight like Butcher or something like that, it's basically the same fucking thing 4 times in a row. And so that's not progression, that's repetition. And I don't really enjoy having to redo the same thing that I've already done a bunch of different times. Like, in my opinion, I think there should be 2 difficulties max, okay? And LFR is more of a storytelling mode, and, we'll talk about that a little bit more, but generally, I don't really think that LFR is very good for the game at all. Another thing is the challenge mode dailies. The challenge mode dailies, they reward you with a possible, well, the box always has one in it. They reward you with a 640 piece of gear that can have, again, randomized stats, can be Warforged, cannot be Warforged, can have a socket, cannot have a socket, and it can also have tertiary stats, I think. I'm not entirely sure, but they probably can. So you go through this challenge mode, and the challenge modes are a pain in the ass to put together, by the way, because you're going to have fucking morons, and if somebody drops out of your challenge mode, you can't just invite somebody back in and have them come in. You have to reset the challenge mode and do everything over again. And so it's a huge pain in the ass to get one of these done. And so you finally get it done, you open up your box, and it sucks. And so, what the fuck is that? Like, so you spend all this time, you get literally nothing out of this challenge mode. You don't get anything for completing a silver mode or a bronze mode. You get something for completing gold, but it's like, if you're just plugging this, you're not going to get gold. And so there's no real reason to do these. They're completely unrewarding. Like, if the item was like a 655, or it gave you a token that you could buy one of the 655 pieces from the Apexus vendors, like, these would be incentives. Like, and what we're looking at here is that there are not incentives. Like, things need to be more incentivized, because the challenge modes, they put a lot of work into the challenge modes and all the other stuff, and they're just pretty much, there's no real reason to do them now, because you can just do Raid Finder, or you can just buy the crafted gear, and because, again, you have no control over your destiny, over your success in a game, because you just get a magic box, and a magic box contains bullshit. Like, this is terrible. Again, like, I don't really think that, you don't really have, I'm going to talk about this just for a second here, is it with Reforging is gone, if I get a piece that has haste mastery on it, I'm fucked. And so in Highmaul, there is literally no item for me that has, I think it has crit mastery. I think there's like 1 item that has crit mastery, and I don't have it. But also, there's no real reason for me to try and get it, because the stats are terrible. And so I'm not really able to reforge anything. I have no real control over like what my best stats are for the gear. And so I'm just supposed to get this gear and, you know, like it's kind of good for me, but it's really kind of not. It's not very rewarding. And I know that in Blackrock Foundry, a lot of stuff is crit mastery, crit multi-strike. That's great, but at least right now, it kind of sucks. Another thing is that Mists of Pandaria, obviously, I talked about this a minute ago. Not a minute ago? I don't even know how long this video is. Let me see. Yeah, it's really long. So Mists of Pandaria had a lot more content than Warlords of Draenor did, because Mists of Pandaria had 2 years of people working on content throughout the game. Like they added the Warbringers, they added, you know, the dinosaur island, they added the Isle of Thunder, they added the what do you call it, the Timeless Isles. They added all these things after the game was released. Whenever the game was released, it was basically just a grind fest, or a daily quest grind fest, where you had to do like 45 dailies in order to get 3 things that would maybe give you a bonus roll in a raid. And so this was horrible design. It was fucking terrible, and everybody was mad about it, and that's why so many people quit at the beginning of Mists of Pandaria. And so I don't really want to see that happen with Warlords of Draenor, because what's really coming back is that there's not really the same amount of rewards that you can get. And one of the main reasons for that is that there's so much RNG involved. There's no real reason. So I remember, I think it was like the first boss in Stormstout Brewery in Mists of Pandaria would drop a healing trinket. And so every single day I would go to that place, I would go to Stormstout Brewery on my shaman to get that healing trinket, because I thought it was really good, because I needed a lot of spirit as a shaman, because it's just my playstyle. And so I would do that every single day, and now, like, there'd be no real reason for me to do any specific dungeon. Like, I know that Bone Maw drops a special 2-handed pole arm that is like crit mastery, and so it's really good for warriors. But other than like a few, you know, like very isolated items, most of the gear is all homogenized, and that's why it has to be personal. Really, is because there's so much different chances of stuff dropping. Like, what the fuck are the chances that you're going to get the item that you want? It's basically 0. And so, again, also on top of that, with the tertiary stat, the gem, and then the warforging, there's just no way this is going to happen. And another, like, overarching thing that I have kind of seen a lot in forums and everything is that people, I think, are, in a way, like, growing out of the game. Not in general, but people like me. For example, I started playing whenever I was 16. That was 8 years ago. And so, for me personally, and I had just turned 16 too, and so this was a really, really long time ago, and so my life now is a lot different than it was back then. I don't really have the same amount of time to spend. Like, I remember I used to do a fast walk from the bus up to my house to where I could get on for AV weekend, and my character would be online 72 hours for that AV weekend, you know, one way or another, because I was trying to get as much as I could. And people now don't really feel that same way, or at least a lot of the veteran players and older players don't feel that same way. And I think that one of the big reasons that people kind of just like disregard or don't really want to look at is that you grow up and you can't really spend that same amount of time. Like, I wish that I could just fucking play this game 25 hours a day and just do whatever the hell I wanted, you know, like make different friends in like the game and do all that stuff, you know, the adventure of it. It was amazing. I loved it. And I would still do it now, but I just don't have the time. And I think that a lot of other people feel the same way. And so because of that, they kind of feel like disillusioned, or, you know, like that things aren't as great as they used to be, but actually things are a lot better than they used to be. It's just you're not really able to, I guess, like put in the same amount of time to get the same stuff that you were able to back in the day. And so I think that's very overlooked. It's a very sad reality in my opinion, because man, the more I think about it, it's just, oh my god, it's amazing. Like, I just play all the time, and now I just can't really do that as much, because obviously, you know, I have school, I do the YouTube thing, and a lot of that is has to do with the game. You know, it does take up a lot of time that's not really necessarily game related, and just other things in real life that I have to do, like, you know, hanging out with people and just all the other stuff that you really didn't have the same same ability to do, or the same requirement to do in high school. And so I think a lot of people are growing out of the game because they're getting older. That's really all there is to it. You know, like the freshman college student that was raiding in vanilla is now like a 28, 29-year-old professional in like some sort of a job. Like, it's a very different life. And so people, like, their lifestyle changes, and sometimes the game can't really accommodate that, regardless of how the game changes, because people just don't have the time to play that type of a game. I don't really think, however, that MMOs are dying. I don't really think that MMOs are getting too old. I don't think it's a tired out genre. I think there's always a new crop of 14-year-old neckbeards. Like, that's, or neckbeards in training, actually. Uh, there's always a new crop of them, and there are people all the time that start playing the game and they do all that other stuff. And the main thing here is that keeping the people who start playing a game and giving them rewards to make them feel like they're actually doing something with their time. Whenever I first got items, level 60, I was first able to get my first epic and all that stuff. That was a really big deal to me. And so if you can give somebody that same feeling, it's like, to be honest, I gained more self-esteem through playing Warcraft whenever I was in high school than I gained through doing anything else, really, whenever I was younger, period. Like sports, or, like being on, like, the honor roll, or anything like that. Just any of that. Like, Warcraft gave me way more reward and self-esteem than any of that stuff ever could. Because, well, anyway, I'll talk about that in another video, but I think that there are a lot of people that they have there's a potential to give them that same feeling, and I think that, if Blizzard can really do that, it can help a lot of kids, and that's what it comes down to. Now, I have some of my, I guess, like, solutions for the problems in the game. As I said before, one of the big ones is that I think that Garrison should be account bound, and the reason for that is it just takes up way too much time, and it would kind of make garrisons less important because you don't really have a bunch of them to deal with. You just have this one garrison, and it's like your account garrison, and that's all there is to it. Sometimes your characters would have in there, and that could also allow to have, like, your characters, like your little alts running around your garrison, and I think that would be pretty cool. Okay, I think it would be pretty cool, and so maybe they might do that, maybe not. I don't really think they will, though. And so another thing is that garrisons should not have trade chat in the city. And as I said before, I did remember, what do you call it? In the alpha, they had, like, that area where Netherstorm is in Outland, and so that might turn into a daily quest or a daily hub. And if they do that, that's going to help out a lot of people in terms of, like, getting out there and interacting with people on their server and making friends. Like, making friends is one of the most important things in the game, honestly. I've talked about that plenty of times in this video. Another thing is that they need to add, like, I would wish they added some sort of, like, Paragon leveling system like they have in Diablo into WoW, to where, like, maybe you could get a higher chance at, like, maybe just, like, more stamina or, like, more strength or something like that, and just to make things a little bit easier. But, like, give it some sort of a cap or something like that, so you can't really do it, indefinitely, but you can have, you can spend a lot of time doing it without actually having, so you actually have some sort of way of, I guess, like, propelling and, like, progressing your character. I've been talking for a long time. I had to take a drink. Another thing is that I think they should bring back item upgrades, enchants, gymming, and I think they should add even more stuff, like more stuff to make you feel like you're invested in your character, you're invested in that gear. You put a lot of work into this fucking piece of gear, and I think that that's really important. I know that some people don't really like it, and I spent about 3 or 4 hours before I made this video reading what people think, just in general, what people think. And a lot of people they really like that all that stuff is gone. But I do think that making things too simple makes them unrewarding. Simple is usually very similar to shallow. And, you really want to have the depth because, as I said before, the reward factor is the most important thing. Another thing is, like, things are very, what do you call it? They're not very server related now. Like, you are able to make groups through the pre-made group finder. You're able to do tons of stuff like that. Yet you only can have a friends list that has 100 people on it. And 100 people is a very small pool to choose from whenever you're looking for groups. And you want to create groups through a group finder or something like that. It's just kind of hard to find the people that you have played with because you don't really have that much room on your friends list. For me personally, I've always had this problem. Like, if I had enough room, just like personal friends, not like people who would add me from, like, my YouTube channel or anything, but if I just had 500 slots on my character list, I would probably fill that up within a month. And just because of all the friends that I've made throughout the years playing the game. And I think a lot of other people would feel the same way if you're, like, a raid leader and you're trying to get stuff done, but you have to go cross-realm because you're on a small server. And so having that larger friends list would allow you to add every single person that you would possibly want to talk to, and it would just make things easier, and again, it would promote more interaction between players and a stronger sense of community. And also, I think that this is something that I've talked about a lot, and I've talked about it before, is they should add a 4th difficulty for 5-man dungeons, like some sort of Burning Crusade-esque difficulty where you can't group finder, the same restrictions that they have on challenge modes, but it would drop all epic gear, like maybe 655, 660 gear, something like that, and it would be really hard, and it would scale up to your gear level, and so, like maybe it would scale up to, like, I don't know, like maybe, I don't know, I guess like if they had it to where it would scale up to like 650, and like it would be like base 650, and it would scale up from there, so it's like you just outgeared or something like that, but it would scale up, not down, so you didn't feel like you were downgraded, and you can get some actually really good gear, or maybe that's where you could get the items that would warforge your gear, something like that, and so you could actually get real rewards out of the 5-man dungeons, because right now, there's no real reason for me to run a 5-man. Like, I do it because I'm just plainly because I'm fucking bored, and so that's the only reason I do it, and I think that kind of sucks. Like, some of the dungeons are really great, and I wish I had better incentives to run them. Also, this is something they really need to do, is they need to add a voice chat system in-game that works. Like, this has been an issue permanently, and the reason for that is that if you do a lot of PvP, like higher-level PvP, you know that this is an issue, but people would DDoS you because they can get your IP address, and people would say, oh, that's illegal, they shouldn't be doing it. Well, it happens anyway. And if you call your ISP like I did whenever it happened to me, they just said fuck off, they don't give a shit. That's all there is to it. And so you've got really no recourse for this. And so making an in-game voice chat system would allow it to where you didn't have to share your IP with everybody else. And also it would make it to where people could interact better with each other, because obviously you have a more personal touch with talking and communicate with people whenever you're talking with them rather than just typing. It's pretty simple. And I think that, like, in general, the game needs a bigger sense of community, and I think one of the best ways to do that, like the group finder option, was a huge step in the right direction. Like, I was really happy about that, and I think it's great, but it's only a step. Like, we're not really there yet, and I think that's why, you need to have the voice chat, and, like, the voice chat would be probably one of the biggest improvements that they could make, but I don't really think that will happen for a number of reasons. But if they do that, I think it will help a lot of people in terms of like setting up raids, making more coordinated raids, and just all that other stuff. And also it would prevent the DDoSing, which is kind of a big problem in the PvP community. People say that gear score ruined the community, that gear score is what the problem was, and that's not true. Like, anybody that remembers back in Burning Crusade, instead of gear score, it's like if I was an arms warrior and I tried to do a 5-man, like, I could have better gear than everybody else in there, but nobody would take me, and just because of my class. And so people would just find other ways. Like, you could check somebody based on their stamina, and so, or like you could just get gear checked. Before they had armory, you'd have to go to Stormwind and they'd gear check you, and then they'd just kick you out if you had bad gear. It's the same thing. It's not like anything has changed. Gear score is just a number, so they can just do it faster. And so gear score item level has done nothing to make the community any better or worse. It's just something to make it easier to be a dickhead or to not be a dickhead. That's all there is to it. Another thing is that this is something that's like a huge problem, in my opinion, is that the official WoW forums have an upvote and downvote function, and what that effectively does is it silences and punishes people who have opinions that are not the same as the majority. And by the majority, I mean just the people who are on the WoW forums. I looked at like one of the larger threads, and it had like 2,000 views or something like that. And so that's actually a very, very small number. Like, if one of my videos, if I was looking and like I tried to find another person on the game who would watch one of my videos that has 2,000 views, it would be really hard to find another person like that. And so, but effectively they do filter out anybody who, like right now, on like the general forums, if you have any sort of a positive opinion about the expansion, or you say that people should look for other things to do, or maybe you should try and do normal mode difficulty instead of just doing raid finder every week, you get downvoted, and like you get downvoted enough, and it actually makes your post invisible. So you're effectively like being silenced just by having this different opinion. And I think like on a forum you shouldn't really have upvote and downvote functions, and it's really made the forums a lot shittier. And hopefully they'll get rid of that, because it's really, really bad. And I also think that LFR should not give loot, and that is something that I know a lot of people will get pissed off about. I don't think it should give any loot. If the purpose is to tell a story, you don't need loot to tell the story. And I know that will make a lot of people not do it, And that's the whole point, because you need to have people who communicate with each other and interact with each other, because that's what the game's built on. The game's not built on this like I guess like this carnival of different rides that you can go on. Like that's not what people play the game for. That's not what people stay for. And what I think that Blizzard should focus most on is it finding how to make people stay in the game, not how to make people just play the game once or twice. And in general, I think they should also, like, one last thing is they should add more reputations, like about five new reputations that actually gave real rewards. And as I said before, the Firelands dailies were, in my opinion, better than the Quell Danas, better than Isle of Thunder, better than Timeless Isle. It was like one of the best content patches, and in terms of solo content, it was absolutely incredible. And so hopefully they do something like that in 6.1, but we'll see. Let me see how long this video is. I think it's probably going to be about an hour. Wow. So I hope that you guys kind of enjoyed it. I don't really like to do long videos like this that are like super long, because like I'm worried about like messing it up at about like 30 minutes in, something like that. But I don't really think it's been too bad, so you guys will probably see this one. But point is, I hope that you guys really kind of agree with me, and if you have other real solutions, like share the solutions. Like obviously we all know what the problems are. A lot of people have different versions of what the problems are, but they all really kind of come down to a few different aspects that are all kind of the same. What are the solutions? Think about what can we do, what can Blizzard do, something tangible that you say, this is what we want, and they'll probably give it to you if enough people want it. So think about real solutions, and that's what I try to do in this video after assessing all of the different problems that I've been reading about for hours now. So that's really all I've got. Thanks for watching, and like, comment, subscribe.